Business Insider completed a 5-month investigation into every member of Congress on their financial conflicts and transparency and found dozens of lawmakers in violation of the Stock Act. And it's not just lawmakers. Insider found that at least 182 high-level staffers on Capitol Hill have missed deadlines to disclose their personal stock trades. The violations are bipartisan, though, with late reporting split down the middle between Democrats and Republicans.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked for her reaction to Insider's stock trading investigation, where she defended members' right to trade. Let's watch.
Madam Speaker, Insider just completed a 5-month investigation finding that 49 members of Congress and 182 senior congressional staffers have violated the Stock Act, the insider trading law. I'm wondering if you have any reaction to that, and secondly, should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. We have a responsibility to report in the stock. On the stock, but I'm not familiar with that 5-month review, but if people aren't reporting, they should be. Because this is a free market and we're a free market economy. They should be able to participate in that.
Insider's Deputy Washington Bureau Chief Dave Levinthal is here to discuss Insider's deep dive, Conflicted Congress Project. Great to have you with us.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the free market too, a big fan. What the government does is not like necessarily within the scope of the free market, like using knowledge that they would have from, being the ones who set the rules and regulations for corporations and then using that to benefit themselves would be like the opposite of the free market. But, what did you make of the speaker's comments?
Well, the speaker, of course, is entitled to her opinion on this, but it's important to note just the bottom line facts of the matter. Lawmakers are not like you and I sitting at home with our TD Ameritrade app, getting stock in ExxonMobil or AT&T or Tesla. They are privy to incredible levels of high-level and privileged information. Their aides are also very much entitled to that information. They know a lot more about different companies, different industries, and of course are empowered by the body politic to make decisions on behalf of the public using that information that they're coming into contact with and have knowledge of. So as a result, that information could ostensibly be used for personal gain. It could be used for making stock trades, buying and selling equities, or other financial transactions. And that really just harkens back to the point of the Stock Act, the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act of 2012, which is at the heart of this matter. Congress passed it for itself as a defense against this type of activity, a defense against conflicts of interest, and a bulwark against corruption, ultimately. But our reporting has panned out and showed and demonstrated that members of Congress sometimes are very bad at following the rules of the road.
And beyond the information that they get as members of Congress, there's a less discussed aspect of this, which is the kind of the political economy and the political incentives that owning these individual stocks sets up. I want to get your take on that. In other words, if you know that you own, to take your example, Exxon stock, you know that your congressional action when it comes to climate change policy could impact your stock price. And so it's not that you're trading on knowledge, it's that your ownership of that stock disincentivizes you to do what's in the public interest as a result, or punishes you if you do the right thing. And if you punish people system-wide, they're just not going to do it.
Yeah, and one aspect of this, too, is that right now, as a lawmaker, you don't face any real significant penalty for violating the Stock Act if you ultimately do, particularly the disclosure provisions of the Stock Act. So if you, for example, are driving down the highway and you're going 55 miles an hour, but it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and you know you're only going to get a $5 ticket, well, you might be driving 55 a lot, okay? For lawmakers, the same principle applies in part in the sense that they only face a $200 fine as an initial fine if, for example, they are months or even years late in disclosing stock purchases or stock sales in companies that in terms of the total value of those trades could number into the 6, 7, or even 8 figures, and we've found evidence of all of that with several lawmakers.
Let's get into more of the findings. The investigation also found at least 11 senators and 34 representatives hold shares of Pfizer, and 2 representatives and their spouses held shares of Moderna during 2020. Nearly 24 Democratic lawmakers propped up as environmentalists have ties to fossil fuel giants and petroleum-focused energy companies. Several of these lawmakers wield power over the energy sector via their committees, including the House Appropriations Committee's Energy or Environment-related subcommittees, the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works, and the House Natural Resources Committee. And so on, with 15 lawmakers who help shape U.S. defense policy have investments in military contractors. When it comes to Facebook, Nancy Pelosi, Ron Wyden, and Representative Ro Khanna all have financial ties to Facebook. Which is kind of interesting because Nancy Pelosi has relentlessly attacked Facebook. She's accused Mark Zuckerberg of basically being Satan, or worse, causing Donald Trump to be elected from her perspective. So do you see do you notice a gap between how the lawmakers speak about these companies and these issues, and then is it really surprising when you look and see, oh, here's where their financial ties are, or is it the opposite of that? Usually they're saying things that you would expect them to say based on where their financial interests are.
It's both, and you listed some of the many examples that we found of lawmakers, bottom line, trading in stocks around the same time they were making policy on the industries that those companies are a part of, or making statements about companies or industries of that sort, taking votes. So you also need to step back, too, and understand what the companies themselves are doing. These are not companies who have an arm's length relationship with Washington. On the contrary, many of the companies that you just put up on the screen spend individually millions of dollars every single year to lobby the federal government, including members of Congress. Members of Congress themselves, their top staffers, they're trying to do something to help their business. They're trying to do something that is going to help their bottom line. Those things may not necessarily be what is in the public interest, but it certainly is in their own special interests. And lawmakers, if they are vested in those companies, then they have that consideration in their mind, knowing full well that if they make a decision that it may not just help their constituents or help the United States of America, but may also help their stock portfolio.
Have you seen any evidence that this is becoming something of political salience, where members of Congress will start to pay a price for this? Because if they don't, they're obviously going to continue to allow themselves to trade all that they want, with some modest disclosure rules and even more modest fines if they don't go through with it. Do you see any change on the horizon here, or is this too kind of low level of an issue for people to get fired up about?
Well, no, I don't see change immediately, although there are several members of Congress, including those who have offered up a bill that is in Congress right now. It was introduced in March. It's now December, of course, and that bill is languished in committee, going nowhere. So that may be the best indication of Congress's appetite to go above and beyond the rules that they've already set for themselves. But this does go back to the notion that Congress primarily does set the rules of the road for itself. It's sort of akin to a hockey team, 2 hockey teams. They get together, they go on the ice. There are no referees, and they're left to call their own penalties. You can imagine how that's going to work out. So Congress, when it's in charge of basically punishing its own, oftentimes defaults to not punishing at all or only providing slaps on the wrist. Now, sure, the Justice Department could theoretically get involved. And in a couple of cases, they have conducted investigations on stock matters. Think of Richard Burr from last year, senator from North Carolina. He got into some hot water, but ultimately was not charged. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, also, too, from a civil standpoint, could get involved. They continue to look into Richard Burr, and we have an article that talks about whether they may have greater aggressiveness in going after lawmakers. But at least at this moment, no. The answer to the question is that it doesn't appear that anything is going to change, although it bears in mind that it always could change if lawmakers get upset enough.
Right, and the fact that there wasn't an outcry after Burr didn't get charged, after getting a briefing, walking out of the briefing, calling what his brother-in-law immediately makes a bunch of trades. He makes trades, and that doesn't rise to the level of charges. I don't see what will. So Dave Levinthal, thank you so much for joining us. Great reporting.
Thank you, and my pleasure.
And we will have more Rising right after this.